It's funny how the most catastrophic moments of your life don't always start with a bang. There's no clap of thunder, no screech of tires. Sometimes it starts with a simple, silent realization that you've become a ghost in your own home. That was me. My name is Clara, and for the last 5 years of my 15-year marriage to David, I felt like a beautiful, well-dusted ornament on a shelf. We lived in a lovely house, we had successful careers, he as a financial consultant, me as an interior designer, and from the outside, we were the picture of contentment. But inside, the silence was deafening. We'd finished each other's sentences so long ago that we'd run out of things to say. Our conversations became a series of logistical updates. The plumber is coming Tuesday. Don't forget the Hendersons' dinner on Friday. I'll be late at the office. David had always been a quiet man, thoughtful and steady, but his quietness had evolved into a profound and impenetrable distance. He would come home, kiss my cheek with the absent-minded familiarity of someone brushing their teeth, and retreat into his study, behind a wall of spreadsheets and financial reports. I told myself he was working hard for us, for our future, but our future felt like it was already behind us. A faded photograph of two people who used to laugh until they cried. I started feeling invisible. When I dressed up for a date night, he wouldn't notice. When I tried to talk about my dreams of maybe starting my own design firm, he'd nod and say, "That sounds great, honey." But his eyes would be on the stock ticker scrolling across the bottom of the television. I was starving for a connection, for someone to see me, not just the wife, the hostess, the partner in a well-managed life. That's when I met Liam. He was a client, a charismatic restaurateur who hired me to redesign his new bistro. He was everything David wasn't. Effusive, spontaneous, and he looked at me as if I'd hung the moon. He noticed the color I'd chosen for the accent wall. He remembered I loved peonies, and he listened, truly listened when I talked about my ideas. The attention was like a drug, after years of emotional famine. I told myself I was just flattered. I told myself it was harmless. But my heart started beating faster every time my phone buzzed with a text from him. The first time I crossed the line, it wasn't a physical act. It was a lunch that stretched into a 2-hour conversation. Then it was a working coffee that felt more like a date. We talked about everything, our childhoods, our regrets, our secret hopes. With Liam, I felt alive again. I felt interesting. The guilt was a constant low hum in the background, but I drowned it out with the intoxicating sound of his laughter and the way his gaze made me feel seen. David, meanwhile, remained oblivious. He'd ask how the bistro project was going, and I'd give him a vague, "It's going well," my stomach churning with the lie. I convinced myself that David wouldn't care, that he was too wrapped up in his own world to notice if I drifted away. The affair became physical on a Tuesday. I told David I was at a design conference in the next city over. It was a complete lie. I spent the day with Liam in a quaint little hotel, and as I lay there in that unfamiliar bed, the guilt finally roared to life, so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. I went home that night, my skin feeling like it was covered in a film of betrayal. David was in his study as usual. He looked up when I walked in and said, "How was the conference?" His voice was so normal, so trusting. "Fine," I squeaked out, my own voice sounding foreign to me. "Just a lot of seminars." He nodded and went back to his work. And that was that. His trust felt like a weight crushing me, but instead of stopping, I dug my hole deeper. I was in too deep, addicted to the feeling of being desired. This went on for 6 months. 6 months of secret phone calls, of deleted messages, of fabricated business trips. I became a master of deception, and with each lie, a little more of the old Clara, the honest one, chipped away. I started noticing small changes in David, but I was too self-absorbed to read them correctly. He seemed calmer, more patient. He started taking an interest in my work, asking detailed questions about my clients, about my processes. I thought, foolishly that my absence had finally made him appreciate me. I thought my affair was, in some twisted way, saving my marriage by making me more happy, more vibrant at home. Oh, the lies we tell ourselves are the most destructive of all. Then one evening, everything shifted. I was in the kitchen, nervously waiting for a text from Liam. David was sitting at the breakfast nook and watching me with an expression I couldn't quite place. It wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness, it was curiosity. "You've seemed different lately, Clara," he said, his voice even and soft. My heart leapt into my throat. Different? How? Just more energetic, like a weight has been lifted. He took a slow sip of his tea. "It's nice to see." The kindness in his voice was a knife to my conscience. "I've just been trying to focus on the positive," I managed to say, turning away to hide the flesh on my cheeks. "I'm glad," he said. "You know, I've been doing some thinking myself. About us, about how I haven't been the most present husband." I froze, my back still to him. This was it. He knew. He was going to confront me. "I was thinking," he continued, "that we should do something big. A second honeymoon, perhaps? I've been looking at villas in Tuscany." I turned around, completely disarmed. Tuscany? That was where we'd gone on our actual honeymoon. This was a gesture of love, of reconnection. The guilt overwhelmed me in a nauseating wave. In that moment, looking at his sincere, hopeful face, I knew I had to end it with Liam. I couldn't do this to David. The game was over. I would end the affair, and I would devote myself to fixing my marriage. I would earn his forgiveness without him ever having to know. "I think that sounds wonderful, David," I said, and for the first time in months, I meant it. He smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "Good. I've already started making some plans." What I mistook for a loving reconciliation was, I would soon learn, the first carefully laid stone on a path of revenge, so meticulous, so utterly devastating, that my little affair would seem like a childish prank in comparison. He wasn't planning a second honeymoon. He was planning an annihilation. And I, the betrayer, had just walked willingly into his trap. Believing myself to be the one in control, the ghost was about to discover that the house it haunted was, in fact, a beautifully constructed prison. The decision to end it with Liam felt like stepping out of a fever dream. The guilt that had been a constant gnawing companion suddenly had a purpose. It would be the fuel for my redemption. I called Liam the next day, meeting him at a public park, a place far removed from the whispered intimacies of hotel rooms. I told him it was over, that I couldn't live a double life anymore, that I owed it to my husband to try and save my marriage. He was angry, of course, calling me a coward, but his anger only solidified my resolve. I deleted his number, blocked him on every platform, and walked back to my car feeling a fragile, tremulous sense of hope. I was going to be a better wife. I was going to deserve David's unexpected and gracious offer of a second chance. For the next few weeks, I was the model of contrition. I cooked David's favorite meals. I suggested movie nights. I listened intently to his stories about work, asking follow-up questions, trying to bridge the chasm I had created. And David was wonderful. It was like the man I had married 15 years ago had returned. He was attentive, affectionate even. He'd bring me flowers for no reason. He'd suggest walks after dinner, his hand finding mine in a way that felt both familiar and thrillingly new. We started planning the trip to Tuscany with a shared excitement I hadn't felt in years. He handled everything, researching villas, looking at flight schedules. He even started learning a few phrases of Italian, charmingly mispronouncing them at the dinner table to make me laugh. I was so deeply immersed in this beautiful illusion of reconciliation that I missed the signs. I mistook the precision of his planning for devotion. I mistook the calm in his eyes for forgiveness. I had no idea I was dancing in the eye of a hurricane. The first crack appeared not in our relationship, but in my professional life. A major client, a woman named Mrs. Albright, for whom I was designing an entire penthouse, abruptly canceled the project. She was vague on the phone, citing shifting priorities, but her tone was frosty. I was confused and a little hurt, but I wrote it off as the capricious nature of wealthy clients. Then it happened again and again. Within a month, 3 of my biggest, most lucrative projects had evaporated. My pipeline of new inquiries, once steady, dried up to nothing. My business, the thing I had built from scratch, the one part of my life that felt truly and wholly mine, was crumbling. I mentioned it to David one night, my voice thick with frustrated tears. I don't understand it, I confessed. It's like someone is telling them not to work with me. My reputation has always been spotless. David put his arm around me, pulling me close. It's just a rough patch, Clara. The market is volatile. These things happen. He kissed my forehead. Besides, soon we'll be in Tuscany and you can forget all about this. Maybe it's a sign that you should think about that firm you always wanted to start. I've been looking at our finances. We could manage it. His words were meant to be comforting, but a cold, tiny knot of dread formed in my stomach. He was being too understanding, too dismissive of a catastrophe that was threatening my career. But I pushed the feeling away, attributing it to my own paranoia. Then came the social isolation. We were supposed to go to a cocktail party at the home of some close friends, Mark and Sarah. They'd been our friends for a decade. We'd vacationed together. But when we arrived, the conversation felt stilted. Sarah was polite, but distant. Mark wouldn't meet my eyes. Later, I went to the restroom and overheard 2 women I considered casual friends talking in the hallway. Such a shame, one said. I always thought they were so solid. I know, right? The other replied. But you never really know what goes on behind closed doors, do you? Must be a saint to put up with it. I stood frozen inside the stall, my blood running cold. Put up with what? They had to be talking about me. But how could they know? Liam wouldn't have talked. He had too much to lose. I felt a hot flush of shame and panic. When I emerged, the 2 women fell silent, offering me tight, pitying smiles. The car ride home was silent. I wanted to ask David if he'd heard anything, if he noticed the chill in the room, but I was too afraid. He just drove, humming softly along to the radio, a picture of contentment. The final blow, the one that shattered the illusion completely, came on a perfectly ordinary Thursday. I was trying to salvage my business, sending out portfolios to potential new clients, when my computer started acting strangely. Pop-ups appeared, my cursor moved erratically. Thinking it was a virus, I took it to a tech shop. The young man behind the counter, after an hour of diagnostics, called me over. "Ma'am, this isn't a virus," he said, his face serious. "Your machine has remote access software installed on it, very sophisticated, hidden deep in the system. Someone has had full access to everything on this computer for, well, from the logs, at least 6 or 7 months. The world tilted. 6 or 7 months. The entirety of my affair, my emails to Liam, the secret social media profiles I used, the hotel confirmations, every single damning piece of evidence had been laid bare, not to some anonymous hacker, but to someone with a very specific, very personal interest in my life. I drove home in a blind terror, my hands shaking on the wheel. I walked into the house, and David was there, sitting in his study, my laptop open in front of him. He looked up as I entered. His face was not angry. It was serene, utterly, terrifyingly calm. "CL," he said, his voice as soft as ever. "We need to talk about Tuscany." It was then that I saw what was on the screen. It wasn't my emails. It was a financial spreadsheet. Next to it was a document from a lawyer. The heading made my breath catch in my throat. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "The villa I booked," David continued, steepling his fingers. "It's quite beautiful. It has a lovely view. I've ensured you will have a very long time to enjoy it." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "The trip is one way, Clara. The funds I've transferred to the Italian account in your name only are substantial, but they are all you will ever get from me. If you try to contest the divorce, if you try to return to the United States, every email, every chat log, every photograph from your computer will be sent to every one of our friends, every one of your former clients, and the licensing board for your design accreditation. I couldn't speak. I could only stare at him, at this stranger I had lived with for 15 years. You thought I was in my world, didn't you? He said, a faint, cold smile touching his lips. My world was you, Clara. I always knew. The late nights at the office, the sudden interest in perfume, the distance. I'm a financial consultant. I deal in patterns and risk. Yours was a pattern of betrayal. And this, he gestured to the laptop, to the documents, is simply the calculated mitigation of that risk. He had not raised his voice. He had not called me a name. He had simply engineered my utter ruin. He had systematically dismantled my career, poisoned my social circle, and now he was exiling me. He wasn't just leaving me. He was erasing me from his life with the cold, efficient precision of a surgeon removing a cancer. The revenge was not hot and violent. It was arctic and absolute. And as I stood there, the weight of my own stupidity and his brilliant, monstrous vengeance crushing me, I realized the most horrifying truth of all. I had never really known the man I married. The silence in the study was heavier than any shouting could have been. I looked at David, at this architect of my ruin, and the sheer terrifying scale of his plan unfolded in my mind. He hadn't just discovered the affair. He had curated its consequences. The canceled clients, a few well-placed words from a respected financial consultant about unreliable character and personal turmoil had done that. The coldness from our friends, a carefully measured, heartbreaking confession from a wronged husband, asking for discretion, knowing full well it would spread like wildfire. He had made me a social and professional pariah, all while playing the devoted, forgiving spouse, making my own guilt and attempt at reconciliation a part of his cruel theater. There's a flight tomorrow afternoon, he said, his voice still devoid of anger. It was just a statement of fact. Your bags are already packed. I took the liberty while you were out. Your passport and a single one-way ticket are on the hall table. The villa is paid for 1 year. The bank account in your name has enough to live on modestly for perhaps 2 more if you are careful. That is the entirety of your severance package from this marriage. David, you can't. I finally stammered, my voice a broken whisper. I can, he corrected me gently. The alternative is a very public, very messy divorce where you get nothing but notoriety. I've structured this to be the cleanest possible break for me. He closed the laptop. You wanted to feel seen, Clara. Now you are. I see every part of you. And this is the consequence. The next 24 hours were a blur of silent, gut-wrenching horror. I moved through the house like a phantom. He slept in the guest room. In the morning, he drove me to the airport the same way he'd driven me to countless parties and dinners. He didn't come in. As I got out of the car, he finally looked at me. And for a fleeting second, I saw not hatred, but a profound, finished disappointment. Goodbye, Clara. And then he drove away, erasing me from his life as easily as closing a book. The villa in Tuscany was, as promised, beautiful. Sun-drenched and serene, overlooking rolling hills of cypress trees and vineyards. It was a gilded, cage. The loneliness was absolute. I was adrift in a foreign country with no friends, no career, and a past that had been systematically obliterated. I was alone with the ghost of my mistake and the brilliant, terrible man who had punished me for it. He had won, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet, unstoppable strategy. His revenge was not in hurting me in the moment, but in designing a future for me that was a permanent, beautiful monument to my own failure. I had the view, the sun, the time, but I had nothing else. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, even under the Italian sun, that this was exactly what he had intended all along.